All right, we talked some basketball. We're going to drive right into Keegan's wheelhouse right here and talk about the NFL draft. Coming up in about 5 weeks from now, another on-location draft, which I really like and should be in a great football neighborhood this year when they head up north to Green Bay. Keegan, you were covering the draft last year in person and what turned out to be a very consequential one for the Patriots, obviously drafting Drake May at number 3. A year out from now, or you're looking back a year later, what was kind of like covering that draft like, especially being there for the night that the Patriots took their next franchise quarterback?
Just to be clear, I wasn't in Detroit. I was in Foxborough. So we were down there.
Sure.
We obviously got to speak to Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo after they made the pick, spoke to Drake May. Being down there on night one, there was a little bit of a question whether or not they would trade the pick. We obviously knew that the Giants were interested in trading up. They love Drake May in the same way that the Patriots did. I never really bought into the hype of the Patriots actually trading back. I thought it was pretty clear that quarterback would go 1, 2, 3, and New England would just stand pat because, in my opinion, there were no bad options. So coming into the night, the guess was it was going to be Drake, and they were just going to go chalk and kind of the most interesting aspect of that night was, are they going to trade back in? They had the 35th or 36th pick. They ended up trading back in the second round a few spots, but there was a question, will they trade back in, especially when you reach the end of the night and Xavier Legette was there and Ladd McConkey was there, and there were some enticing, I'll say, wide receivers left on the board. Obviously, we know what they did. Probably wasn't the greatest decision. Ladd McConkey, if they just stood pat and drafted him, they'd probably be in a better spot right now. But I think that was the most interesting aspect of the night because it doesn't end at 8:45 when they make that number 3 pick. It ends at 2 a.m. when the longest first round of all time finally ends, and you're worried about, are they going to trade back in and just extend my night by 3 hours? They didn't, thankfully. But I think that's the most interesting aspect of it. It's not when they'll pick. It's, oh, God, are they going to trade back in and kind of ruin things? And I think that's an interesting betting angle because having teams make multiple first-round picks in a year like this year where every team owns their own first-round pick, it's an interesting thing to look at for sure.
There's a Patriots ticket we're going to look at and something along those lines in just a little bit, but there are a few DraftKings odds we took a look at this week, starting with the number 1 overall pick. Has anything changed in your mind that, we see anything different than Cam Ward going 1? Obviously, he's a very heavy favorite at minus 800 odds going into this. Something I thought was interesting, too, as you look at this order, the NFL tweeted the other day, it was like the first time in the common draft era that every team holds like their true first-round pick.
Yeah.
Crazy to think about.
No. Yeah, it's going to be Cam Ward. I think there's no doubt in my mind it's going to be Cam Ward. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I was on here with Mike, and I thought Travis Hunter maybe. If Tennessee really does want to go generational talent, I think he's the only guy you can really apply that to in this draft. I love Abdul Carter, but generational is not the word I would use to describe him. So I think if you take what Mike Bergonzi said for what it's worth maybe sprinkling a little bit on, especially at plus 950. I think it was like plus 750 when we talked about it. But at this point, when the odds shift so far into a certain place, you kind of see the writing on the wall because a team like Tennessee where they could either draft a quarterback or they could trade back, those feel like the 2 most likely options. If anybody's trading into the number 1 spots, to take a quarterback. So it's going to be there. It's not worth betting because it's at minus 800. I don't know anybody who would throw their money on odds like that. The most interesting one to me is the first non-quarterback selected.
And we'll get into that too. Abdul Carter, the favorite there at minus 350. Travis Hunter does have plus money at plus 210. Armand Membu, the offensive lineman out of Mizzou, follows at plus 1300. Mason Graham, the defensive lineman from Michigan, and then Ted McMillan, the receiver from Arizona. Any of those speak to you? It feels like Carter's really, the steam is still there. That little injury scare for a moment when everyone ran to their phones during the combine seems to kind of be, put to rest. It was put to rest that week, and it still feels like this is very much a top 5 pick we're talking about. How high could this pick be? And, is he still, in your mind, the favorite, just as he is on the betting lines, to be the first non-quarterback selected?
Yeah, I think number 2 is it wouldn't be crazy if a non-quarterback goes at 2. It's Cleveland. They're sitting there. They have so many needs, kind of like the Patriots, but they also don't have a quarterback. So there's a thought. Some teams have thought, would Shedeur go to Cleveland? Would Deion Sanders allow him to go to Cleveland? I think is the real question there. But I think Travis Hunter is in consideration because They just re-signed Myles Garrett. They restructured his contract. They gave him the money he was looking for. Are you going to double down on edge defenders? It's probably never a bad idea to do that, but when you have the amount of needs that Cleveland has, especially at the wide receiver position, especially at cornerback, it's not a bad idea to just go with a Travis Hunter. At 210, I don't hate those odds. I don't love the minus 350. If it's anything over minus 200, it's like, what are you betting on? Really? You know what I mean? Like, it's most likely going to happen. You're not making anything back. So I like Travis Hunter as the first non-quarterback selected. I'd say, looking at the odds for number one overall pick and first non-quarterback, that's the only one I would be willing to put money on is Travis Hunter, first non-quarterback at 210.
I think that feels like the case, right? Is like, I can't see them going Carter, after the Garrett extension. Yeah. And Garrett kind of gave that interview thinking about, there might be something going on at quarterback, like keep an eye on it. That just kind of creates the feeling there. Hunter, you're looking at 2 top 5 picks there, probably regardless with Hunter and Carter. Which order that is, I feel still is based on team need. And the Giants situation is still so interesting to me too, and what they decide at quarterback. Right. If they still draft someone, if this Wilson thing comes together, if they sign a veteran, still draft somebody. I think the Giants are such an interesting X factor in that, and kind of see how that goes. Next one I had up, I haven't seen this in a while. And this is, maybe my interest in asking you about this is, maybe less so about the odds here and more about maybe the pick that you had to predict. Because I feel deprived. I didn't get the Keegan Stiefel draft spreadsheet this year. So I feel a little, underwhelmed going in on who my guys are to keep an eye on in late rounds. It's with Mr. Irrelevant, and they went by position. The favorite is for Mr. Irrelevant position-wise would be on the defensive line or an edge rusher at plus 320. That's the favorite there, followed by offensive line, wide receiver, corner, running back, and then quarterback at the end. Obviously, we had Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant a few years ago. Is there a position you like there? And more importantly, is there a fun little prospect at the back end of the 7th round that you could want to see in that role to kind of just boost the story a little bit going to training camp, wherever that may be?
Well, first and foremost, no spreadsheet this year, but you could check out individual draft profiles on NESN.com. I don't know if Ethan can throw a link in there somewhere, but go read those at NESN.com. We're going to have 25 this year, so still doing the work, still putting in the work for you. When it comes to Mr. Irrelevant, what is the deepest position in the draft? I think that's the smartest way to bet this because you're going to have teams throwing stuff at the dartboard. There's also an interesting kind of conundrum there because once you get into late 6th round, early 7th round, agents will call teams and tell them, our guy's unavailable. Do not draft him. We have no interest in being drafted at this point. We'd like to go to unrestricted free agency, so we can just sign with a team that, my client has the best chance of making. Jacoby Myers famously did that. He told every team but the Patriots, and I believe it was the Carolina Panthers, don't draft me because once I get to unrestricted or undrafted free agency, I'm just going to sign with one of those 2 teams because they give me the best shot. Jalen Coker did it last year with Carolina. So it's tough to know who will be available at that point, but I think the deepest position in the draft right now is running back. I think there are guys who would be drafted in the 3rd or 4th round in normal years that will get pushed back into day 3. That might be a 6th or a 7th round draft pick. So I like the odds at 8-1. Obviously, quarterback. I've said it a million times in all these shows. NFL teams are stupid. They make dumb decisions. They have dumb reasonings for the things that they do. So just knowing that Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, I could see whoever ends up having that pick, because it gets traded around usually. I'm not even sure who has it right now. Whoever has that pick, if they do need a backup quarterback, saying, well, we're going to take one and maybe he'll be the next Brock Purdy. So I like those odds, 8-1 for running back and quarterback. Offensive line and defensive line are usually a pretty decent bet because those are the most amount of players drafted at those 2 positions. So I'd stay away from wide receiver and corner, specifically because those are the 2 positions that usually tell teams do not draft us. If I had to put money on it right now, I'll say running back at 8-1.
I like the quarterback odds there. Maybe it's still like the Purdy story in my head, but you're plus money across the board here. Have fun. Right. And I think the
there's no way of
thing
knowing.
Is part of it. No, none.
Yeah.
I think, and we can kind of round out with the Patriots here. And this just, for me, gets so much more interesting now with that first wave of free agency done. Obviously, a lot of money spent. Some of that in the trenches, some of that back in the secondary. Obviously, the Carlton Davis move to put him across from Christian Gonzalez helps with some positional thoughts. But now there's another DraftKings ticket that I kind of wanted to dive into, and that was the first position selected by a team. So for the Patriots, the favorite is offensive line at plus 120, followed by cornerback plus 125, wide receiver plus 450, defensive line plus 550, and then a running back at plus 2200. After what you saw from them in free agency, obviously, moves, there were positions addressed, holes filled, some filled. Obviously, the Milton Williams one really feels like the big one there.
Somewhat.
Somewhat, especially with $100 million talking like that. But it's so interesting, right? Because you still talk about there were some offensive line additions, but Will Campbell's still there. Do people still have the feelings they had about Will Campbell now that the arm measurements are out? You brought in a boundary corner to go across from Gonzalez. Does Travis Hunter still flip it into that scenario? If you still believe he's a corner and are not going to be giving him primary reps on offense, it's still so interesting to me what the Patriots do it for. Position-wise, what do you kind of think about when you think about with the first round for this Patriots team in about a month?
I think offensive line is the most likely. Will Campbell, if I had to put money on a specific player, it would be Will Campbell. Armand Membu obviously has pushed himself into consideration to be the first offensive lineman taken, and I think the Patriots will select an offensive lineman with their first pick. So that's what I'm looking at. I also discussed this on Foxborough Rush, where there's a chance that they trade back to take an offensive lineman, whether it's Josh Simmons or Ariante Ursary or one of these guys who's really a middle of the first round, late first round offensive tackle, but a guy they think can play left tackle or they know can play left tackle. So that's one that I would consider. But at the end of the day, when you look at all those names, they're all left tackles or they're all offensive tackles. So that's the smart bet. I also think about what position is Travis Hunter? Because if Travis Hunter is available at 4, I know I'd take him. What would I announce him as? It's certainly not cornerback or wide receiver. I'd say he's an athlete. So can I get some juice on that, on an athlete being taken with their first pick? Because if I can get that at, 2,500, the only guy who's going to be announced as an athlete is Travis Hunter, so the odds wouldn't be that great. But corner at plus 125 is a bad bet. Wide receiver at 450, if you think they take Tet McMillan, I don't hate. But offensive lineman is the smart bet. It's the right play in my mind. And then if you really want to get interesting with it, just what would they announce Travis Hunter as, and then you could throw your money on that. If it is at corner, that's tough. Those aren't great odds for you. So offensive line, if you're making a bet, if I can give you advice on anything in this show, it's the Patriots to take an offensive lineman first at plus 120.
I'm so happy you brought that up because we talked about needing clarification on that buzzer beater one earlier in the show.
Yeah.
That's my thing is if you take Travis Hunter, if you're firm in the Patriots taking Travis Hunter at 4, like what do you put down for your bet? Is it wide receiver? Is it corner? Yeah. Are you literally just sitting on pins and needles when his name gets called to see what gets announced there? I think that's so interesting. And what do you, I don't know, is DraftKings like customer service going to get like flooded the next day with, he played, I had him as a corner. He's this. I had him as a receiver. He's this. Like, how do you handle that as a book too? I think it's so interesting.
I want to wait to see how many snaps he takes in his rookie year before you pay it out. Stuff like that. I think too with Hunter, there's a chance that whoever takes him gets really cute, and they might not even go athlete. They might go like the New England Patriots select football player Travis Hunter out of Colorado. Just something stupid that. I don't think it would be smart for a team to announce him as a cornerback or a receiver because, one, you're giving away your hand, and two, you're kind of backing yourself into a corner a little bit. I think the smartest thing to do would call him an athlete. We're going to use him however we see fit. And I don't know if any players have been announced that way. Obviously, the draft, there are guys who are taken in like the 6th round that they don't know what position he's going to play. Julian Edelman, what was he announced as? Was it as a receiver or a cornerback? I don't know. So maybe do some research. Maybe go back and see what Julian Edelman's announcement was and see how the Patriots handled that. But it's tough. I think DraftKings maybe there's a chance they see exactly what you said, where they're getting influx of calls being like, well, I didn't bet on him thinking it was going to go this way. I thought it was going to happen this way, and it still kind of fit my vision. So we'll see. It's an interesting just bet to have out there, I guess.
Just about 5 weeks to go until the NFL draft. Again, the Patriots hold the number 4 selection, so a very interesting draft for another straight year to see where New England goes and to get ready for that. There's nowhere else to get ready for the draft than with Foxborough Rush. So you can catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can hear from NFL draft experts like ESPN's Matt Miller and NFL.com's Eric Edholm. In my mind, Keegan Stiefel's right in that conversation as well. But you can listen to all the latest news surrounding the Patriots as we work through the offseason. You can catch the show on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Twitch, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. We're about 5 weeks away from the NFL draft. We are 1 week away from, as we mentioned in the open, everyone that's not the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs opening up their Major League Baseball seasons. Should be another fun one. It feels like there's an extra boosted vibe in Boston that hasn't really been there for the last couple of years, but this roster is deserving of that, and we'll have some Red Sox notes in just a little bit. But I want to talk awards. This is the week we used to, get the Sports Illustrated when you were a kid, see the predictions tab, you run to see who's winning the World Series, who's winning awards, and I want to get into that with you today, Keegan. We can start with MVP, and we can start in the American League. Aaron Judge is the favorite at plus 310. Some other candidates behind him, Bobby Witt Jr. plus 450 in Kansas City, Yordan Alvarez plus 600 in Houston, Gunnar Henderson, who's on the cover of the show this year, plus 750, and Jose Ramirez at 15-1 over in Cleveland. Is there an early favorite that you have in the American League?
I'm staying far away from American League MVP. I look at this list, and Aaron Judge is obviously the favorite. At some point, it's got to stop. Like, at some point, the fact that he's 6'7" and he's on the back half of is he 32 or 33? Like, he's much older than everybody thinks he actually is. It's going to catch up to him. The foot thing he had, either was it last year or 2 years ago with the toe that he stubbed in Los Angeles, he missed a bunch of times. So I think there's a chance that something happens this year that kind of takes him out of the running for MVP. And then, Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, two guys who are similar in my eyes, where they're like franchise infielders, but they're young, and that's a really volatile place to be, where you're betting on a younger guy who really hasn't proven it to the highest level. I think Bobby Witt has, but Gunnar Henderson hasn't. Yordan Alvarez is essentially a DH. They moved Jose Altuve to the outfield. I don't think he's going to be playing much outfield, so I don't love betting on a DH. And then Jose Ramirez and Rafael Devers and Jarren Duran and Alex Bregman on the Red Sox side. I don't love any of those ideas. So I would have to dive into this a little bit more before I place a bet.
I've really talked myself into Bobby Witt the last few days. I think just the pure factor, there is so much speed there. You talk about a guy, and him and Jarren Duran probably going to be competing for that triples title in the American League again this year. I think here's the thing with Bobby Witt. If you go back and look at his home road splits last year, they were kind of like insane how big of a difference there was. Again, he just got ridiculously hot in the month of August. And I think that's going to, you could see another month like that from him very much so this summer. I have some Royals thoughts that I'll get to in a minute, but I've really talked myself into Bobby Witt Jr. plus 450 here. I really have. Sure.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Just the profile of the player. That's a guy who wins the MVP. I don't have enough of a read on it to actually want to bet on it.
Let's flip over to the National League side. Not much of a surprise. Shohei Ohtani is the favorite there at plus 170. Juan Soto, obviously the massive splash of the offseason, going to the New York Mets at plus 550. Fernando Tatis Jr. follows him, and Mookie Betts right behind, and then Bryce Harper at 14-1. The Ohtani thing, it just feels inevitable, right? Especially with him being back on the mound at some point this year too. Was outstanding for the Dodgers, like everyone expected. Not even pitching last year, but does enough to get them to the World Series. Didn't do much in that series, but again, everyone else took over, or maybe it's more so the Yankees let them back into Game 5. We can have that conversation a different day. But the Ohtani one just feels inevitable, especially knowing that the fullest extent of the two-way player is back.
Yeah, Juan Soto's my pick. I think the factor of he was the big offseason signing. He went to New York. He mashes. He's going to mash specifically at Citi Field, and I think the teams that they play when he's in Miami and Atlanta, when the ball flies, like he might be a 40 home run, 120 RBI guy this year. There's a real chance of that happening in my mind, and I think he's going to score a ton of runs if he's batting right in front of Pete Alonso. You could jot him down for 20 extra runs scored a year. The same way he was last year in New York, the other side of New York, with Aaron Judge. So I really like Juan Soto, plus 550. You get a really good number there. You're not just betting on Shohei to win it again, even though he's probably going to win it again. the way I didn't have a read on the American League, I think I have one in the National League. I really like Juan Soto. He should be, outside of Shohei Ohtani, the face of baseball. He's that good, and I think he's going to be that good for a very long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if that narrative gets pushed a little bit this year. Like King of New York, he's the face of the biggest franchise, in New York nowadays. So I like Juan Soto at plus 550.
The value's great. Should be fun to watch. Flip over to the Cy Young
Yep.
side. We'll go back to the American League. Tarek Skubal's the favorite at plus 380. A fantastic year for the Tigers last year. Brought them all the way to the doorstep. They were a game away from the American League Championship Series. Garrett Crochet, obviously the one that gets talked about a lot around these parts. The new ace for the Red Sox. Plus 450 for him. Cole Reagans from the Royals follows at plus 1,000. And then Jacob deGrom at 14-1. You want to talk about staying away from something in this segment?
Yeah.
That's mine. I don't know what Jacob deGrom has left. Again, I think the Rangers were really excited when they brought him in. Scherzer was there for a little bit. Evaldi's still doing his thing. There's a lot of talk with the Rangers that we'll get into when we kind of go to the divisions in a moment, but I don't want to touch anything near deGrom until I see a few starts and see what he's back to. For me, and I love Cole Reagans too. I really do. He came to Fenway last year on a Friday night. That series right before the All-Star break was exceptional. Talk about a great return that they got in the Aroldis Chapman trade, who's obviously now on the Red Sox. But Kansas City really made out in that deal. They have a star in Reagans that's being right in the mix. But this Garrett Crochet one, the value feels great, and that's not just from a Red Sox side. Like this is someone I know he's only had that first the first year as a starter last year. But the stuff is there. He looks fantastic this spring. The fastball's up to 101 already. He's already started to tweak the arsenal a little bit, started throwing the sinker a little bit more last year. Andrew Bailey can help him really dive into that this year. The Garrett Crochet odds at plus 450 just feel fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000% here. Jacob deGrom, if you bet him, you have brainworms. That's the stupidest bet you can make that's on this board right now. And Crochet is another instance of he's in a bigger market now. And obviously Juan Soto is not in a bigger market, but he stayed in a big market and he moved, which obviously gives somebody a little bit of juice. Whenever you go to a new team and you're expected to be the face of the franchise, you get a little bit more of that media bump. So Crochet coming to Boston, being the ace of a team who's expected to compete for a World Series. He doesn't have his extension yet. He hasn't signed, so I think he's pitching for something. So wouldn't be surprised at all to see him win it. I like the number. I like it a little bit better than Skubals, even though I think Skubals has a higher likelihood of winning the Cy Young, just because he's done it before. And Reagans, I understand liking that. I think the fact that he pitches in Kansas City might go against him a little bit. Like, big ballpark, a lot of doubles. Like, guys hit well in Kansas City, as we've seen. So I don't know if he'll ever win the Cy Young. I don't know if he'll get there, but Crochet, I like that number a lot.
On the National League side, Paul Skeens, another athlete on the show this year, cover plus 300 there. A fantastic rookie season last year, started the All-Star game. Zach Wheeler in Philly, another promising potential pick at plus 750. Chris Sale, the reigning Cy Young winner. Everyone around here knows that at plus 800. Blake Snell and Corbin Burns follow. I'm all in on Skeens. I really have been. And I just think a full season from the get-go. Still pitched most of last year. The stuff's too good. He added like a two-seamer and a cutter during spring training that looks like a wiffle ball. He's going to be exceptional this year and run away with this award.
I agree. There's not much more you can say other than the fact that I think media members are going to be kicking down the door just to give him an award. Like, baseball nerds like you, Tim, and I love you, but you're a baseball nerd. They love this guy. So I think people are going to be doing everything they can to give him as many, awards and as much recognition as possible.
We'll go to the Rookie of the Year last, and then I have one more kind of fun ticket I found a few days ago that I want to get your thoughts on. But we'll go to Rookie of the Year. Jason Dominguez in New York is the favorite there. Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell are right in the mix, along with Jacob Wilson and Jackson Jobe. The one for the Red Sox pair there, for me, is just when does the call-up come? Does Christian break camp with the team? How early in the spring does Roman come up? Because I feel like for that, I have way more trust in them to go out and win this award than Dominguez, because the Yankees, I think, are still trying to figure out what they want to do with him. So I think the Red Sox pick, either one that you like, is totally fine. It's just when they come up this year could kind of hurt that candidacy a little bit. But if I was to throw one out, I think the Christian Campbell one's totally fine to think about.
Again, I hate to just agree with you on everything. Jason Dominguez stinks. I think he can hit. He literally can't play baseball. Like, he doesn't know how to field. No thanks. Let me stay far away from that guy. And I like Christian Campbell over Roman Anthony because I think he's going to be up sooner, and I think he's going to hit a little bit more consistently than Roman Anthony. Roman Anthony is a much flashier hitter, and I think the power numbers will be better. I think if Christian Campbell can carry like a 285 average and have some pop and drive in a few runs at the bottom of that lineup, he's going to win the award. Not a doubt in my mind. Because Jason Dominguez, I have no faith in. I don't know who Jacob Wilson is. Sorry, not a big baseball guy. And then Roman Anthony, I think it could be May before you actually see him playing every day, and maybe even further than that. Because if Wilyer Abreu's playing well and Jaron Duran are playing well in the corner outfield spots and Ceddanne Rafaela is as good of a center fielder as everybody thinks he is, it's going to be hard for him to get into the lineup consistency. Much easier for Christian Campbell to do that.
We'll wrap it up on the National League side. Roki Sasaki comes over with the Dodgers, another big addition to that rotation at plus 225. He's the favorite. Dylan Cruz in Washington at plus 350. Matt Shaw plus 425. Some people around here may remember him as a Cape Leaguer. Bubba Chandler at plus 900 and Jordan Lawler at 11-1. Just like we just talked about with the American League side and how there's some real candidates there who may have their chance to win that award taken from them based on what time of the season they come up. That's my thing with Bubba Chandler, because he has looked excellent, through the 7 starts he got in AAA last year to finish the year. Looked really good in their spring breakout game. Obviously, there's a lot of young talent in the rotation already in Pittsburgh with Skeens and Jared Jones, but I'm all in on Bubba Chandler. And if he has enough time to really fight for this award, I like the odds at plus 900. That's kind of my X factor, my wild card, whatever you want to call it here. I'm all in on Bubba Chandler, and if he has enough time to win this award, I say let's rock with it. Let's go plus 900.
I'm going to give a little lesson to the folks listening to a betting podcast right now. If you don't know anything about the topic, don't bet on it. I don't know anything about the National League Rookie of the Year conversation. I know who Roki Sasaki is. I think he's good, but he plays for the Dodgers. And who knows if that's going to be enough, because you're playing in LA and you're playing with so many superstars. You might get overshadowed. It might not even look as impressive as you might be. Also, isn't his elbow about to explode? Didn't we all see? He got hurt last year and his velo's down, and he's not the same guy.
He looked. He made the start in Japan this week. And he'll kind of keep being ready to go. But I don't know. I'm still just kind of like Roki Sasaki. I don't know. It's annoying me to I know, because his prospect status allows him to be the top prospect in baseball. It was Roman Anthony. I get why that's allowed and why the prospect rankings work that way. But I think I was also just so fired up about Bubba Chandler this year. That's kind of where I stick with it. But I don't know, the Sasaki thing. The Sasaki thing it'll be fun to watch this year. Plus 225. If you like those odds, that's fine. I like to have fun with Bubba Chandler. But that'll do it for this episode.
The experts.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this episode of The Spread. Keegan, this should be a fun episode to look back on in a few weeks when March Madness wraps up and see how our brackets did.
Yeah, we'll definitely compare and contrast during early April.
Should be a fun one to watch over the next few weeks. Enjoy March Madness. Get ready for the NFL Draft. And like we said, opening day for baseball just a week away. For Keegan Stiefel, I'm Tim Crowley. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of The Spread. We'll catch you next time. Cool.
All right, fellas.